Theme is No Man Left Behind Except the Charge. June 1st will be the bowling. Will be bowling in Fayetteville with the men wearing their Christ Temple apparel. On June 2nd, we will have Bishop-elect Poole who will be delivering our message. June 9th is the men's panels talk, which is Accept the Charge. On June 15th, we will have a barbecue lunch at the church. And on June 23rd will be the CT Cafe Book Club. Thank you for your, and we have 4 ways that you connect with God. The first one is a 1 minute prayer. The second one is to read one verse per day. The third is the weekly memory verse. And the fourth is to repeat the monthly affirmation daily. Thank you for your attention during these times. We will now introduce to you Lady T.
Good morning. And today, thank you all for all the activities for everyone who's all the women who helped out this month for Women's Month, made Women's Month very successful. Thank you all very much for all that we've done. Today we're wearing our T-shirts that we made for one of our activities. And today is book club discussion. Our book for this month was Kingdom Women by Tony Evans. In the book, this book's discussion was talking about kingdom women, how we become kingdom women. Internet slow, y'all. Sorry. It's about embracing your purpose, power, and possibilities. This book went through a lot of different women in the Bible and showed you a lot of different women, the significance of a kingdom woman. So, has everyone read the book? So, anyone has anything special to say about the book? And did you like the book? You need another mic. Dr. Malone.
I really enjoyed the book, and I really appreciated how he described what a kingdom woman is, and then being able to integrate and use examples of women in the biblical text to be able to hone on the points that he made, and also knowing that he was able to address and explore some of the challenges that we may face, but for us not to give up, for us always to focus on God, that God, our relationship with God is what makes us a kingdom woman. And when we focus on God, we have the power and ability to overcome no matter what struggle, no matter what challenges, and to always be encouraged and to always have hope. So I really appreciated the book.
One of the things that I liked about it was the way he mentioned how women are great influencers and how you never hear that behind every woman is a great man, but you always hear behind every man is a great woman. And it kind of made me think about how we still have to be careful what we say because our words do influence others. And so we have to make sure that we're saying the right things and living the right way because we just never know walking down the street. We can always influence somebody.
Good morning. This is what I like about the book, everything. but the thing I want to focus on this morning is Chrystal's Chronicles,
Yeah.
how she made it applicable to our lives. she was able to show us how everything that happens to us is a God thing because we are kingdom women. It's a great book. It's worth reading again and again. So there's a lot of meat in there and a lot of good bullets can that we are doing and things that we can do better. So it's great.
Was there anything anybody didn't like about the book? Anything anybody didn't like about the book? Would you all read this author again? Yeah, I thought it was good. I liked the Crystal's Chronicles, the her life, and it was just realistic because it is your life when you look at everything. But what really captured my attention in the book when the author was talking about the Proverbs 31 woman. You know, everybody know I ain't never liked her, but but what he said was, and it made me think about it. This was the advice of a mother to her son, so which means that this was an older woman talking to her adult son. So she's looking at it from a different perspective because I noticed that my perspectives are different when I'm looking at a 20-year-old woman now versus when I was a 20-year-old woman. It is very different. The way I saw life then, I see life differently now. So what you want for your son at this point is very different from what you would have wanted. Were you that woman at 20 that you want for your son at 20? We don't see that. But he talked about um, this was a lot of things that she had done were over the course of her life, and not that she was doing them all at once. And I'm like, that makes more sense to me because there's no way one woman can make clothes, make the fabric to make the clothes, sell these clothes, clean up, take care of her house, make sure her husband's business is together. There's no way one woman did all of these things, and that's why I never liked her. But I'm like, now if you look at it over the course of my life, yeah, I have done probably a little bit of all of that, but just not all at once. And a lot of women are in a different situation and struggling because they're not this woman all at once, and they're thinking they're not being Christian or biblical women because they're not this Proverbs 31 woman who is very different from your age as a younger woman versus as an older woman who has adult children and grandchildren. You see things differently, and I'm like, so now I have a different appreciation for the Proverbs 31 woman after reading this because now, okay, over the course of my life, yeah, these things have happened. So now we're in a better situation with the family. And
Just wanted to follow up with what you were talking about, the perfect woman in that psalm. And it says that they're not looking, I think I heard this last week, not perfection, but progress. And I think she progressed to that. And it did mention, and the Bible didn't say that, but it did mention that she had help.
yeah,
Yeah, it looks like she was doing all that by herself. So most of us felt inferior in reading about that woman. So now that made it a little easier to talk about her.
right.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I'm like, okay, now it's better to look at her now and seeing her, especially when you realize she had help. It's different for a woman with 3 or 4 children doing it by herself versus a woman with 3 or 4 children that has a nanny. It's very different.
I think it's good that you brought that point out because I think, especially in this Christian walk, we spend a lot of time focusing on being the fully realized version when we're never going to be that until he come back to get us, right? We put unnecessary pressure on ourselves when we don't look at it from the perspective of the becoming, the progression into. And I think when we see it from the fully realized perspective, then that's when we start to put that kind of pressure on ourselves. So that was a great point you brought out.
I agree. I'm with you, Lady T. I never liked Proverbs 31 woman either because it was unrealistic.
Correct.
But what I really appreciated about the book is that he highlighted that there's no way you can be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. And the need to be able to ask for help and to know that it's okay. And so when you think about it from a marriage perspective, you know, you should be helping one another, right? And so I really appreciated, enjoyed just how he kind of deconstructed some of the thinking that women may have when they think about what it means to be a Proverbs 31. And I know for myself, I had already deconstructed that text um, because it wasn't depending on the lens that you come from, when you read it, it wouldn't be a healing and encouraging text, especially if you feel like, or if it made you feel inferior, or as if you're failing as a wife or a mother because you had to be all of these things. And no one can be all of these things. And then when you look at it from a cultural perspective, being a black woman, we carry that burden and that weight of being everything to everybody, and that image of the strong black woman, and not being able to think it's okay to ask for help, thinking that we have to do the be all and be all to everybody, but that's unrealistic, right? And so I really appreciated how he went at the text, and then I appreciated the Chronicles as well, Chrystal's Chronicles, to be able to highlight to us what it looks like in real life, so we can apply it to our own life and we can see ourselves in it, and knowing that it's not about perfection. It is about progress. And it's about relationship, being able to support one another in all that we do. So let us tear down and deconstruct being perfect in every area of our life. But what I really appreciate, because when he talks about the kingdom woman, it's about our relationship with God. And God has to be priority,
Yeah.
right? And when we allow God to be priority, then God can remove the veils from our eyes and also from our imagination and how we think, and allow us to really see who God is calling us to be, so that we can live and live on purpose. I like how he brought out purpose.
Yeah. And another thing I saw before, somebody had put on Facebook that as black women, we're taught how to live without a man, but we're not taught how to live with a man. And it's the same thing with help. We're taught how to live without help, but we're not taught how to ask for help or to live with help. We have help, but we have to accept that, we have a village, and we have to utilize our village.
Just still in line with that, there was a song, I think, that says, I'm not that superwoman. And we have to accept that we are not, and we don't have to be. We don't have to be. We just have to work towards that perfection until Christ comes.
And I saw something in the book that I like, that I would like to do for myself. And it said, sometimes you have to just, when you wake up in the morning, lay in the bed and just reach your arms up and say, God, what do you want me to do today? What's your purpose for me today? And so when I can accept what his purpose is today, I don't have to get stressed about what I'm trying to do, because I got this is due, this is due, this is due, this is due, and nothing's getting done, because I'm so focused on what needs to be done that I can't get anything done. And if anybody's like me, I'm all over the place. I go from this to this to this to this. I get distracted easily, and I got 20 projects open and none of them finished because I'm trying to do a little bit on each one. And so, but Cardell said that's me. But yeah, so that I think I'm gonna have to utilize that to say, God, what's your purpose for me today? Then let me focus on what I need to get done today. And I think that will make a lot easier progressing and going on to the next level, when we can say, hey, I'm gonna focus on what God wants me to do today. I can't just try to do everything. And I can't be everything to everybody. We hate to say no, but we can't be everything to everybody. We have to learn how to say no sometimes. And especially if we're going to ask God, what's your purpose for me today? If you're asking me doesn't line up with what God's purpose is for me today, I'm going to have to say no. and we're going to have to accept that.
And no is okay, because it's a complete sentence, and no explanation is really needed. So once you say no, is no, and I don't have to give a reason as to why I say no. There is a reason behind it, but no. And I'm perfectly fine with saying no. I don't have a problem with that.
Me neither. Praise God. Praise God for growth and deliverance. But piggybacking off on Lady T, it brought up the discussion in chapter 3 when he was talking about excellence. And I just want to read a quote. He said, "Excellence is not concerned with you having to compare yourself to others. It's concerned with how you are compared to the potential of how you are supposed to be, because it's about God's destiny for you." And I think sometimes we can lose focus of that. But when we rise early in the morning to ask God, what is my purpose for today? And be able to open ourselves and avail ourselves to hear from God so that we won't be distracted and that we won't be focused on what everybody else wants us to do. But what is God saying to us? What is God calling us to do?
So I would like to piggyback on learning to say no. Sometimes we miss our purpose because we have said yes to too many things. Sometimes we, as women, are taught to do all, be all, and everything is possible. But I did not learn the value of no until my father died. And why I learned it was because I realized I had been so much for other people that I needed to take a moment to be for myself. We think we can do it all. As everyone has said, we put that pressure on ourselves to be able to accomplish everything. But there came a moment in time, and I was 45. I'm not ashamed to say my age. At the time, I was almost 45, and it took me 45 years of living to learn to say no. And yes, you are right, it's a complete sentence. It is okay to say, but we as women don't really realize it's okay to say no. It's okay for someone to feel like you have taken a selfish moment to take a moment for yourself. But it was a moment that if you had not filled your own tank and had not tended to your own cup, you would not have anything to let it flow over to give to someone else. Learning the power of no is not us not doing something for someone, but sometimes taking a moment to just do and be something for ourselves. There is power in that, there is healing in it, and there is truth inside of it.
And I would just add to that that it's not selfishness, but it's self-care. And I think that as black women, from a cultural perspective, we need to be able to do better when it comes to self-care from a health perspective, because African American women are number one when you look at whatever disease, whether it be diabetes, whether it be breast cancer, um, stress, heart attacks. We are at the top of the list, right? And so when we put too much weight or we try to carry the burdens of life alone, it can hinder us and it can cause disease and dis-ease. And so it is important for us to be able to say no and practice self-care and know that self-care is not selfishness, right? Because we want to continue to live so that we can live on purpose and be who God is calling us to be and live out our destiny.
And even when you ride the plane, they tell you put your own mask, oxygen mask on first before you can help someone else, because you need to be in a position. And as far as our health care, we have to be actively involved in our health care, because a lot of things, when you go to certain doctors, they push things off, tend to discount your feelings and what you're going through. So you have to be actively engaged in your health care to say, hey, this is a problem and I need it addressed.
Since we're talking about African American dark skinned women, I'm going to talk about my favorite woman in this, Zipporah. That's just who we are.
Mm-hmm.
We okay to follow our man until he's not following Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If we are real kingdom women.
Yeah.
So I liked her because she did what Moses wasn't ready to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was meant for her to do that. It was
Yeah.
meant that way.
Yeah.
And we're meant to be who we are. And we got to stop being apologetic for who we are. We will step out and do what God has called us to do most of the time. We mess up. We mess up, but we have to be okay to be who we are and stop trying to be like someone else because that might work for them, but it doesn't work for us. It doesn't feed us. It don't mature us to try to be something else. Not saying the other people are less than we are, but they're who they are.
Yeah.
And Zipporah and God's use of her proved that. She did the cutting because he wouldn't do the cutting.
Right. Right.
She wasn't going to let her family be put to risk and him also to be put at risk because he wanted to go with that other side of who he was. So she stepped out and did it. So I appreciate that.
She said, "God said it, and it needs to be done."
Yeah. And if you won't do it,
I'm gonna do it.
I'm going to do it.
And I like there also in that part there they talked about you can't follow a parked car. So men, we need y'all moving. We could follow y'all if you're moving, but if you're a parked car, we can't follow a parked car. And I like that. I'm like, I like that was rich right there. we can't do it. Did anyone else have anything else they liked about the book? Did a male? I want a male perspective about the book. Did any males read the book? For,
I like the part when they was talking about kingdom women, and as a male, we always say we the head, but again, God uses women for a lot of different reasons. Do not block your blessings by blocking your wife's blessing or your spouse's blessing, because you are unable to rise to the occasion for what God is using them for. And with my wife, I love the things that she's doing for Christ. Um, we should never be in competition with our spouses, our wives, for what God has told them, because if God them told them, that sells it. Whether we see it or believe it or not, that sells it. So as men, we're going to be the head. You're going to be the head lead. You can't lead from the back. I'm talking about me now. So we have to get out of the women's way and allow God to use them according to how He want to use them. There's so many times that I'm trying to phrase this right. There are so many times that we have women in the kingdom that's doing God's will, and we may not understand it at the time because we don't see it because God didn't tell us before He told them, because we weren't ready to hear it. So with this book, I was just looking and reading and understanding that, hey, God's going to do what God's going to do, whether He use you or a female. So be ready for it, be content for it, and walk in it. I know this is Women's Month, but even with Men's Month coming up, accept the charge. Man, we got to step up and pep up. Accept the charge. Because these women doing it. And they ain't asking us, can they do it? They doing it because God told them to do it. So that's what I want to say.
And the author brought that point out in the book, that there are more women in church, there are more women following God, there are more women in organized religion, all of that. So if we gonna do it, because if it needs to be done, we're already in position, because we're already. I guess I don't know what it is that makes us more apt to be open to God and the things of God, but it is. I was trying to think about. When I thought about that, I was trying to think of from a creation perspective. I said, because I know that God took the dirt and made Adam, but then He took Adam's rib and made woman. So I said, I don't know if that makes us more open to the innermost part of us because of the creation aspect of women. But it's something to think about, that we're more into that than men are, and we're more likely to be involved.
And first to piggyback, Darcy, I think too sometimes men's egos might get in the way when they see their spouse moving to a higher level faster than they do, and then what they will do is then try to take over. So, for instance, if the wife was given a position, let's say, in the church to run a certain ministry, well, instead of her running the ministry, he decides to take over the ministry. And it's not going to succeed because he wasn't a person that was supposed to do it, but he has this mentality, I'm the man, I'm the head, I should be the one running it, not you. You're supposed to just help me do it. And then they take over it, and then when it doesn't succeed, then she gets the blame for it. And so that has to be, something that we have to be careful about. And I think too, a lot of times when it comes to the men in church, they weren't raised that way. They were more like raised to go out to work and stuff like that, and then they weren't taught how to worship God. They weren't taught how to pray. They weren't taught these things. So it's hard sometimes for them to come in and to relate. And then some men can't handle women being in a higher position. And then it's like, how do we reverse this to get the men into church? What would it take for us to be able to get them in here, to stay in here, and to let them see that everything the world offer is only temporary and it won't last forever? So that's a question that I have. And I pose the question to the men that are in here. What are we doing? What are our plans? What are our expectations on drawing men? And the younger they are, I think it might be easier to impart more into them, because when they get to a certain age, they think they know anything and everything. Nobody can't tell them anything, and that's for everybody. When you hit a certain age, especially when you hit puberty, you think you know everything and don't know nothing. Still can't even add up right. So I think that's one of the most important things that we kind of got to look at as to why we don't have so many men.
Did anybody else have anything? I see she
That's
got.
a question that I'm sure everybody's on everybody's mind. What is it can we do? We can't do anything unless God tell us to do it. That's and it's on our minds because that's what God is saying. That the men are slipping away, especially our men, especially black men, especially young black men. And I have a son. That's always his question, and he asked me to ask Bishop to meet with him, and that was one of his concerns, because he's a churchgoer, and he's concerned about why the black men are falling away, and he have his own idea. Of course, he tells me that at least once or twice a month when we talk. That men struggle with being under someone. They struggle with that. Regardless to whether it's a woman, that's, and he's one of the ones who don't believe women ought to be ministers. He's one of those. And so, but he sees the church being turned over primarily to women because men are not in their position of head. So that's his question a lot. Where are the black men going? Why are they not in church? Why you see more on the streets and on Sundays, coming out of the clubs on Sunday, or going in the clubs if they're open, than church? It's a hard question. And I know that's off our topic for today.
Well,
Yeah.
we're talking about women
Yeah.
and our purpose and king
But
being
men are to lead.
correct.
So it would be difficult for women to lead them into church. We can attract them in here, but that's not what we want to do. If we had a lot of young women, in fact, when I was in Savannah, I knew this young man. I didn't know him, And he showed up at my church one day, and he said, I was told there was a lot of beautiful women in this church. And that's why he came. But he came with some understanding of who God was as well. He was not that he wasn't churched, but he heard that, and he did get his wife from that church. So, and that's what I mean. The message can get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the question that God is putting on our hearts to ask. How can we do it? How can we help?
And we just can't be emasculating when we're in a position of authority as well. If we're going to be over men, we can't be emasculating to the man. You know, we still have to the order, and it talked about that in the book. The order is Christ, the man, and the wife. That's the order.
I can't answer for all men. I can't answer for me. For me, number one, to to get my attention and my interest, you have to appeal to my mind. Right? That's number one. So I would say every man is not necessarily like that. So you got to consider the bait when you hunt, right? You're not gonna catch a duck with deer bait. So you have to know who you targeting, and have to understand what you attract, and just different things like that. And I'm not speaking romantically, of course. I'm speaking as far as making the environment conducive for men to feel valuable here, right? And I heard you say the whole thing about emasculating. It's not just women that emasculate men. Other men can emasculate men as well. When we think of lording authority over someone, sometimes, like, okay, if you coming out of the streets, right, you're not used to letting nobody play with you certain ways or talk to you certain ways. So when you come into church, I know I didn't check my street sense at the door. I didn't. Now I also was churched, so I understood authority, right? But my point being, we have to be conscious of emasculating men while we're making disciples. You got to give them autonomy. You have to let them still be a man, right? You have to consider that this is somebody who's supposed to be leading a family. If he's leading a family, his family can't be looking at him being handled any kind of way by somebody else. Then that deteriorates the respect level that he have in his own house. So I would say those are some of the things that we have to be conscious of.
That what he's saying is what my son says. Men don't like to be handled. So in the street, they can defend not being handled in a different way.
Correct.
Yeah. So, but they don't like that. So it's hard to get them to sit in a pew and allow that to happen. So that's it for me now.
Listening to what everyone was sharing brought me to chapter 3 when he was describing the widow woman and the principles that stood out. But one of them was to be empty, to have humility. And so sometimes we have to learn how to have humility, and we have to learn how to be empty so that God can use us, whether we a man or a woman, whether we a wife or a husband. How can we be humble to the other? And I think that brings about respect as well. We have to be able to allow God to use who God chooses to use, and be humble. If God chooses you, you have to be humble, right? So your position doesn't dictate you or cause you to be oppressive to someone else. So we have to be mindful of that as well. And when I speak to young people, especially young black men, it's about the tradition. It's about it's about oppression too and how they see Jesus. And I try to deconstruct that so they can see Jesus in a different perspective because it's a historical Jesus and then it's a traditional Jesus and they're different, right? And so in the church, we have to begin to preach about the historical Jesus and really highlight the text. We have to look at culture and all the other isms that's present in the text so we can deconstruct some of these images that our young black men have about Jesus and Christianity, right? And I think that when they come into the church, if we could humble ourselves, if we could have more compassion and love, no matter how they come in here, no matter how they look, and allow the Holy Spirit to change them, and us not try to change them to be who we think they should be. But what does God say, and who does God say they should be? But when we embody a spirit of humility, I think that will allow them to come and visit and to stay. I think that it's when we try to change them when they come out, when we know that, for myself, I know what I used to do, and I know who I used to be, and I know how God has changed me, right? So when I came up in the church, they stop you at the door and give you a cloth to put over your lap or send you in the back so you could change your clothes, right? But here we have to be able to invite them in and not judge them and allow God to do the work in them and to meet them where they are. And that is what Jesus did. Jesus met whoever where they was at.
And that's one of my scriptures I like. You are cleansed by the word. We have to allow them to come in here to get the word to be cleansed. We can't just strip everybody at the door of what they're wearing. I remember as a child, we had a girl in our neighborhood. She moved out because she was a prostitute. But she came home to visit, and she came to church that Sunday, and she had on a red dress. And and there was somebody, they was gossiping, and then somebody called my mama and was telling her, "Did you see her at church? What she had on?" My mama said, "Well, y'all know what she do. What did y'all think she was gonna wear?" And I'm like, that always stuck with me, that you know we have to allow people to come in. We can't just be hypercritical of people and what they're wearing, because the Bible talks more about love than it talks about clothes. And we have to be willing to overlook some things uh, when it comes to clothing. I had somebody tell me one time, "You didn't tell these young women about wearing a short skirt." I said, "When I was their age, I wore my skirt short. So why am I going to criticize them for wearing a short skirt at that age when I wore it at that age?" So we have to think about what we're doing with people. Turn
To piggyback off of what you were saying, one thing we do have to do, we have to not be so judgmental, because so often when people come in, we expect them to change overnight with stuff that took us years, and some things we still struggle with. So it's just that, in the matter of being real. Stop putting on that facade, because people see through game, and that's one thing that deters people from wanting to come, because they can see that phoniness and that fakeness in us.
I'll say this to the point you were making, Lady T. Uh, Having three daughters will give you a more dynamic understanding of the progression of womanhood. Um, Having them at different stages of development, also, and different personality types, all of that. Um, what I do notice is that there's way more focus on what women wear versus men controlling themselves, and there's more of a perspective on, like, to what they shouldn't wear versus us getting the lustful spirit and under wraps, right? It's like putting all the responsibility on the woman to subjugate herself under, just to protect him, while, no, there's never accountability to that regard for the man. And maybe that's just my perspective because I have daughters and I see it that way. I don't know, but I'll say that it just got to be across the board.
Well, with sexual assault, they want to know what you were wearing. it was your fault. It was your fault that this man grabbed you in a certain way because of what you were wearing. And we have to. And you're right. It the men have to be more controlling. And I know in other cultures, I know I met this girl from Africa, and she was saying that's part of the culture is that they knew when they left the house in the morning, I'm going to get groceries, I'm going to do this, and I know I'm going to be raped on my way back home. That was just, they had to get it in their head. That was just the way of life. And I'm like, it's so sad that a man can just do this and it's just okay, and it's okay.
Well, I talk to a lot of young men, and we talk about the men coming back to church. A lot of times, what we fail to realize is church have hurt a lot of men. And I'm not saying all churches, but usually when somebody done got hurt in church, especially being a male, it's hard for them to come back to a church. And it's one thing if they come back, but do they participate? Because it's go back to being humble. When people come in, we got to treat them like they people, not because of how they look or how they dress or, I'm just saying for my sons, boy, it's a work in progress. Because, when you in the street, it's hard to come back and let somebody tell you what to do. And then when we come to church, we judge them. Because, again, what they look like, how they act, and we didn't get here overnight. Like Jay Henry said, we didn't get here overnight. So we got to meet them where they at. That goes back to like Peter fishing. We got to cast the net in another part of the pond. We got to cast it over here. You know what I'm saying? We really have to do something to get our young men back in church. Because my grandmother used to say, if we get them young, we got a better chance of keeping them. It's hard to train an old man.
I think this can bring up the point Tony Evans was talking about when he talked about what holiness is. Holiness has nothing to do with our apparel, but it has everything to do with our relationship with God, because that is what makes us holy. And I think that if we begin to teach that and we are we ascribe to that in public and in private, I think it can draw more people, because it is about allowing the Holy Spirit to work in us to change us, but also for us to be able to respect others and respect them where they're at and be our authentic self. And so when young women and guys I speak to, I don't pretend that I never went to the club and that I never drank and that I never did any of that, because I did, right? But my authenticity and me telling my story and keeping it real draws them in and not away. And I think that if we did more of that, especially when we preach in the text, in this culture, because sadly our young people are going away to other religions or not believing in God at all because of an experience that they met when they was in church. And so it's really something for us to think about. But I think first we have to look inward and recognize who we are in Christ and who God is calling us to be, so that we can recognize what holiness is and what holiness is not. And it has nothing to do with our apparel or our outer self, but it has everything to do with our relationship with God, and not a surface relationship, an intimate relationship that allows us to be changed and allows God to be the head and to lead us.
Well, I have two things. I'm concerned when we talk about church hurt. You know, I see that as justification. I often tell the clients, when they relapse and they tell me why, I said that's relapse justification. So when we are in church and we have a relationship with God and we relapse and fall away, we come up with a reason. That's just relapse justification. You get hurt in every other aspect of your life, on jobs, in clubs, at home, and you don't walk away. but you use relapse justification
Absolutely.
to leave the church where you're being fed and where you are maturing in your walk with God, which is the, the primary, the purpose, the priority of life. So you walk away from church because you say, church hurt me. Church hurt me, so I'm not going back. All churches are the same way. That's just a relapse justification. To relapse and go back to sinning. Because God said forgive. When you don't forgive, you are not obeying God's word.
Right.
So just remember that. And I just want to talk about faith. And when we talk about, having the faith for people to come back in, for men to come back, and for women, because there are some women out there that needs to be returned or to come into the church. And it takes us, faith, but then there's a lot of work. We know that faith without work is dead. We can pray and pray for people to come back, but we have to walk. There's a walk in that. We can't just pray for it and don't walk in it. And we can believe, but we still got to walk in it. There's some things for us to do. So, evangelizing is difficult. It's not something we like to do or want to do, but it's something we called to do. And most things that God wants to do is not easy. It wasn't easy to give up the club and all those
Right.
other things that
Right.
we enjoyed in our flesh. But we have to do what Jesus told us to do when he left, because he expects us to do much more, even if it's difficult. So faith, and just one excerpt that I wanted to read in the book, in the part about faith. It is important principle of living by faith is knowing that if God is the cause of whatever issue you are facing, and we are facing an issue when our young people are walking away or not ever coming into church, God knows that. He's involved in that, the issue that we're facing. Then only God can be the solution. So, God knows we are facing that, and we're concerned about that, and he's concerned about that because he gives us what's in his heart. But we also got to know that he only have the solution. So we have to go through this word and pray and ask God give somebody the solution. And that somebody don't be too shy or too unbelieving to go ahead and activate it. So hopefully when my son get the time to meet with Bishop and maybe the men of this church and some men that he know, maybe they can get together and hear God. I pray.
Yeah, I had saw something that was talking about one thing people don't like about Christians. We blame either everything on the devil or everything on God. Right? No, we blame it either on one of the two. Yeah, right. We don't. It was never our fault.
Piggybacking on Elder Bergsteiner, I really appreciated how he brought out when we look at a solution, we have to recognize that sometimes it calls for a spiritual solution, but we're trying to figure it out naturally from a carnal perspective, and so maybe that's why it's not working. So when we think about why the men or the young boys are not in church, we need to come up with a spiritual solution and seek God for answers and guidance so God can give us instruction on what to do to how to get them back.
Yeah, that was a good point he made. Spiritual problems need spiritual solutions.
I dare to be different in the room because I hear a lot of women saying, what can they do? We are taking on a task that does not really fully belong to us. So Proverbs 14 tells us, I did homework while everybody was talking. 14:1 says, "A simple man believes anything, but a prudent man gives thought to his steps." So, a part of accountability belongs to the individual. In the book, there's a section on the fear of the Lord, and it says, "A woman who fears the Lord will receive the praise that is due her." So, at one point, we're talking about being accountable for someone else when accountability belongs to the individual, right? As the old saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink,
Right.
right? So even when we partner, whether it's dating, whether it's a marriage, we can work together in a partnership that we both walk in this path, that we lead our households in this path. That's a unit effort. That is not a single person's journey. The one thing turning 50, again, I'm not afraid to say my age, has taught me in this lifetime is about receiving my praise. We as women think that we are built to do everything, but when someone says, and we talked about being humble, humble is the ability to just say thank you sometimes. When somebody says the work that you have done. When we die, people talk about the work that you have done. Let it speak for you. But how did you know what you were doing in your living? Because I'm dead now. I don't know what you said, right? But the one thing that turning 50 gave me was the ability to stop. And when somebody says I have done something well, to just simply say thank you. Not stop and say, well, I would have did that anyway. Or, yeah, that's just me. Or whatever excuses we give, because even as women, we are built so to just do something like we're the ever-ready battery, that we don't even stop to acknowledge that the person is thanking us for a job well done. When do you stop and take your own flowers? So a part of my 50-year journey was I told my sister I would get 12 roses before this year was out. I have collected something every month. And it was not because, and she said to me when I said it, she said, well, you've been getting roses. I said, you might be right. But now I'm in a position to accept it. So when do you start accepting, right? Not taking on someone else's struggles and challenges. When do you start saying the work that I have done, I can see it. It speaks for me, right? Again, we can lead a horse to water, and we're talking about how to get the horse to drink the water. We're not talking about how to get the horse to the water. So we have to stop and fall back because that the book says it is about the fear of the Lord. Well, that's the first thing. How do you establish that? Right? As Cordell said, you're raising daughters and you are looking at the accountability, not how they dress, but how people approach them. Because last time I checked, if I bought it, I could wear it. And it is how you teach me as a female to respect myself. See, I command that and I demand that. And if you don't step to me the way I carry myself, then don't carry my water. Bye.
Thank you all for our discussion. We're going to turn it over to Bishop right now.
All right, good afternoon, morning. It's morning, my mind is on afternoon. Uh, those questions that was asked, and I purposely didn't answer them. I wanted to wait because the church ain't ready to hear the answer to the question you asked. What we got to realize is that we spend less time in the building than we do at home. So if a man ain't coming, we better check home. This thing is spiritual. We say yes to our sons in front of our husbands and say no to your husband and think he coming to church. He ain't coming. How we talk to men who are not our spouses is ridiculous sometimes, or our fathers in this church. Y'all don't do it to me. but I watch how y'all do it to others. We handle men. In this church. But because I can't fight every battle, I have to go to neology. There's a spirit. Y'all want to answer, huh? There's a spirit why we can't grow, because it ain't welcoming. It ain't welcoming. We don't have a welcoming spirit. We got a game-faced spirit. We show up and know how to play the game. This child here, I've asked for over a year. If I didn't put a lesson together, he don't have a lesson. You know our reply is? Well, what his parents doing? They're raising him at home, not at the church. Why we can't volunteer? I didn't even ask. Sometimes I'll get the lesson, but I got to clean. I got to set it up. I got to make sure his earphones are right. I got to ask him the questions. Why I got to take on all that task? And we want to know why the men ain't coming? This child sat on the stage and said why. And we laughed at the joke and missed the message. Because we, as black women, are taught not to hear black men. Now, that I'm not putting your weight on you for him and his behavior. But you asked the question. If I give an instruction and I'm still saying the thing 3 years later, do you know how frustrating that is for me on a Sunday morning? And I do this for free. You would not tolerate that from somebody else. When you move for your job supervisor who's a man, and not your spouse or the person who you say you love, that's a spirit that is visible to people, especially men. I don't have the ability because men move based on generations. Y'all asked, I was going to sit there and be quiet. So I had a conversation with Mickey. I was like, hey, man, help me out with. He said, Dad, when we get them there, you can keep them. But there's nothing that says we want you. Because in the game, they are received with faults. We receive you based on what you can do for me. See, the end game of the Crips and the Bloods is to get you to move into our system and behave the way we want you. We can control you. But we accept you so we can gain the control. But if we find out a man being a rapist in the past, he can't sit next to our spouse, our children, not the church. Whatever you went to jail for, we still got it over your head. So now I can't tell you my real testimony. I can't be my authentic self because you ain't going to trust me anyway. In the church. And we don't treat each other the way we expect to be treated. So I fuss at Kim, I'd be like, don't get on that stuff. I fuss because I'm like, I don't ask Tammy to do that. Why would I ask another woman to do something I don't even ask her to do? That's out of order. So when I got on him just a second ago, I was like, you're a man, go to the mic. You don't expect a woman to bring you a mic. You're a man. Another woman can do that, but ain't no woman bring me no mic. See, I can't let her bring me stuff and then lead her. Because at the point that she bringing me, she feels she's carrying me. Simple stuff. And we give up control. And so when we come to the house of God, women still see their spouses and husbands and not the man of God. Because that's the way we don't see him at home. Now, a lot of that is the way he carry himself. So I'm not saying that like he's perfect. I'm identifying reasons why they don't come and we can't keep them. And we're going to have to be honest within ourselves to say, maybe I'm still married with my daddy. Maybe because I didn't like the way he treated my mama. I had a list of 7 things I wasn't going to tolerate coming into the relationship. Maybe I just didn't like the environment. Maybe I was molested by my cousins or by my daddy, and maybe that's why I still don't trust men. Is the church ready for this conversation? No. Because we don't want to be honest with ourselves. We want to see our past as glorious. Isn't it amazing? Think about this. When somebody dies, we say all the great things about them. The things I didn't love about my grandfather in life, I didn't love about him in death. I never made him to be something he was in death that he wasn't in life. Because in order for me to grow, I had to be honest about the situation. In order for me not to fall into that pattern, I had to be honest about the situation. So, number one, how much do you show me you value me? Not, that's why I hate Valentine's Day. I do. Let me tell you why I hate it. We expect the man to give us because we're his Valentine. But we don't do nothing for him. See, the culture is not built. See, the man can't be in touch with his emotions if you don't give him a reason to be. He's in touch with abuse. Because fighting is all he knew how to do. He had Tonka trucks. He wasn't taught to hold you, he was taught to fight you. He fights mentally, he fights emotionally. He fights on the job, he fights to be heard on the job. He fights to be heard at home, he fights just to be heard. Now, the tragedy is because of a lack of fathers, men can't even handle another man's voice. So what they think is criticism is actually encouragement. Because they don't know what another man's voice is. Chandra knows what another man's voice is because her daddy was present. But for the child whose daddy has not been present, and now we're looking at 3 generations, because this didn't start in 2010 of absentee fathers. The lock key generation started in the 80s. When Big Mama became 25 and 30, my grandmother was able to take us in because she was home. Had she not been home, we would have been in a home. I have to deal with cousins who have anger issues, who had to overcome them because they were angry that my grandparents took us in and they were in the home before we were. Come on, y'all. I'm talking about men. So why you don't love me like you love him? Because when you give a one child more than the next child and you got the same sex, you got competition in the house. And these are the things that don't stay at the house. Now, they come to the church. Because now I got to work through all of that. And so everybody's saying, where's a doctrinal word? Where's a deep word? I can't give a deep word because they can't hear a simple hello. Because we're dealing with childhood trauma. So how can we change this spirit? Number one, be honest with yourselves. I have to be honest with myself with my tone. Just because it's a catching tone don't make it right. So I have to hear her when I don't want to hear her and force myself to say, okay, all right now, okay. You got to hear. All right now, okay now. You can't be the pastor right now. You got to be the husband. I have that conversation not with us, with me. So I'm able to retain what she says because I'm having a conversation with me. Ooh. So who's teaching the men to have a conversation with themselves? They can't have that conversation because when we don't shout, we ain't excited. And when we ain't excited, we don't want to come to church. Because we want excitement, but men don't move on excitement. They move on logic. So I was preaching at Elder Bergstein in New Orleans. And church was out, they were shouting and dancing, So the chairman of the deacon board pulled me on the side after church. He said, Minister Catchings, when you learn how to preach to men, you're going to be great. Do you know how that cut me? How angry I was with him? The church was in an uproar. And he told me when I learned how to preach to men. I got mad enough to research what he was talking about. Are we mad enough to do the work? That we heard what was said, accepted the criticism, and were ready to do the work. I had to hear her when she talked about my tone. I didn't like it. I still don't like it. But it wasn't about me liking it. It was about me becoming better. But now, here is the problem with that. So I'm using me as an example, all right? Because she heard it for so long that even when I don't use it, it sounds like it. Ooh. Ooh. So now I have to say stuff like, now you know when I'm talking softly now. I'm trying to say it softly. I have to do that prerequisite because of the damage I did. Ooh. But I'm in tune with me. But what about the boy who's not in tune? And I didn't have a father who said me. Listen, I had father examples. My grandfather did not work. He worked 15 years as a longshoreman. That's how his retirement. Other than that, he was a loan shark, and he was a street man. His dad, he was a spoiled man, which is something our family does wrongly because we spoil our boys. But my grandfather was spoiled. His daddy took care of him. He would call him, get $5,000. He just did that kind of stuff. And my grandfather didn't believe in paying bills. You got $25,000 in a suitcase and we got eviction notice. What sense does that make? See, I lived through that and I talk about it, but my auntie don't be like, don't be talking about that. Listen. I'm going to talk about it. The reason we can't get deliverance is because we don't talk about it. I ain't saying you got to talk about it to the nation. But you need to have a conversation with somebody. If your daddy was a road runner, you better identify that spirit because it's going to show up in your sons. I have honest conversations with my son. Tammy told me something about John. I called him. I said, hey, your mama told me, I said, where this come from, huh? Who out there? What are you doing out there? See, I'm getting the business. I'm getting in the business because I'm trying to track you to help you. Because there's some conversations a boy ain't going to have with his mama. I got plenty of notes, so I'm not even going into all that because I'm about to close out. But y'all asked the question, and Chandra had it right. Elder Bergstein asked the question. Y'all went to search for answers. You can't give an answer for a man. You can't. Because to give that answer, you got to step into his whole mindset. Like, I can't give an answer for a female. I can't. I can't. I can hear from God. That's all I can give you. But let's walk through the science of it, because this is spiritual and science. And we don't want to deal with the science of Christianity. We want to deal with the spiritual. Listen, some stuff you can't pray with. You got to walk through the steps of this. You got to understand why you lied. There's some people I don't even ask no questions, because I be like, I asked for that lie. I looked at them. They were ready. I didn't even want to know what. And I'd be mad with myself. Now, on the flip side of it, we have to teach men not to hear the pastor, but how to hear a man. I had an assistant administrator in New Orleans. Her husband came to me. He said, I'm mad with you, but since I'm mad with you, I'm going to bring you the problem, and I need you to help me with this. He said, we got problems in my house. I said, okay, help me out. He said, y'all come here every other Monday. I said, right? He said, that's the best meal I get. My wife will cook for you and won't cook for me. I stopped going. And I told her she was wrong. You can't do for me what you won't do for your husband. I can't let Dr. Malone do anything for me that she wouldn't do for Darcy. You can't buy me a gift you wouldn't buy for your husband. You're out of order. You can't talk to me nice and talk to him bad. It's out of order. But see, most men, because the pulpit is their place of power and authority, then that's where they use it to abuse, because it makes them feel powerful. But I don't have to come here to feel powerful. I'm that ninja. I know I am. Okay, all right. I was raised to know that. My grandmother started that. Be better than the clothes you have on. I just thought that was a weird thing. She wasn't going to buy nothing. Don't go to no church for, I did a poem, the church was good, tore up, and she's like, yeah, all that outside show and film and fashion, don't be all that, be real. But I heard that from a wise voice. Oh, last thing, because this struck me too. We shout and use discipline in the building and an uncontrolled life at home. He ain't coming. So what are our children seeing? Yeah, you understand? Now, I bided my time, and, I was mad with one. I'm kind of mad with both of them right now. But I wanted to wait till I heard from God to talk to him. All right? Because the devil is going to attack what you love the most. Your children, you love them, that's where the craziness is going to come at. All right? And so, one of them was acting crazy. I said, I'm going to show you, wait a minute. We ain't going to do this one-way phone stuff. Well, I'm calling y'all, and y'all don't call me. Now, wait a minute. They had a deadline. When I had my little procedure, I had a deadline in my head. And they made it each by 10 minutes. I didn't call them. I didn't tell Tam. I said, I wish they wouldn't call me by this time. What is your standard for a man? Because your standard will make him respond. I told y'all, Tammy told me, when second time I went up for haircut money. Listen, you need a haircut, you want a haircut, you better get your money. I ain't giving you no haircut. She set a standard. And from that day to this day, I abide by that standard. Sometimes she'd be like, hey, we going to eat, you got this? And I'd be like, listen, I ain't going to be, my man pride, right? I ain't going to be going to go out to eat and I ain't got it. Well, I ain't got it. I'm going to get that fixed at home. Now, listen, I'm going to use this account, but now I need you to take because she know I'm going to come back and take care of it. But she going to help me take care of it. Hey, this bill due. But all of that is it's a twofold street. The answer is two ways. It's understanding the nature of the man you're dealing with and not putting him in a cap for all men. Because everybody's different. I handle Aaliyah different than I handle Alyssa. I haven't learned how to handle Khalees yet. I need limo time, you know. I deal with Kim differently than I deal with Chrissy. I handle Denise differently. And it's not, now here's the problem. We take the handling different as an insult. We see that as he likes or loves this person more. Handle India different. No, I know your personality. And I know what offends you. So I'm not going to cross that line. And if I do, this is what you got to do with a man. You got to tell him. But not anger. You can't wait till you get mad. You see, Brian, this is what I don't like. I'm just using an example because I'm joking. Then Brian going to start hollering back. Ain't no communication. But you got to catch him when the mood is good. When they got money in the house. And say, you know, Brian, 3 weeks ago, this was going on. You got to bring his mind to the moment. Because a man can go to the moment. And you say, you know, this is happening. This is how it made me feel. Yeah. But when you come attacking what he did, he gone. He ain't heard nothing else you said. Now, women like, y'all know y'all got a laundry list. But you can't build a laundry list on a man because he done forgot that. You got to tackle it right away. I'm done. Come on, let's thank God for the women's lesson this morning. All right, they got some donuts and stuff back there. Next month is Men's Month. Now, I'm going to do something different on the Sunday I preach. Because I'm going to ask this question. What kind of man do you see? We'll have a discussion on that. Because maybe I'm not who I am because you haven't identified what you see. Because the job gives me a whole job description. And even outside the job description, they tell me, hey, we need you to do this today. I know you normally do this. Could you do that today? Y'all want osmosis. You should have known by now. Because you will never know the total Misha. That's what we don't want to deal with. I'll never know Tammy in totality. I don't know the work Tammy. I don't go to work with her. I don't know her personality at the job. I don't. I get glimpses of it every now and then, but I don't know. I don't know her standard there. She get to come to work with me. I don't go to work with her. She still expects her husband even while I'm on my job. I don't get that opportunity. All right? These are things y'all got to deal with unless you're in business together. You ain't in business together, you don't know that. She know Darcy is a great mechanic. She don't know him while on that job. So when he being nice to that woman and like, yeah, all right, yeah. She like, wait a minute, that voice sound familiar, a tone like you're talking to me. Darcy say, it sure do. I'm trying to get this money so I can give you some. And she like, I don't want to hear that tone but for nobody but me. And Darcy like, it ain't the same, baby. It ain't the same. She said, it sound the same. Now, I didn't know that. No, I'm just giving an example. But all of that matters. Let's stand, because my time is way gone. Y'all know how to give already. Thank y'all for giving. Thank y'all for participating with us. I guess at some point, Lady T and I are going to have to do a Q&A up here. Lord Jesus, pray for me. I don't know what she's going to say about me. I don't know if I love hearing it. No, but for real, no. Life is just be open. Right? Think about what you say. You know. It's a job. It's a process. We ain't going to solve it overnight. I just gave examples that's not to make a man right. Not giving him right. Everybody has to be accountable for their own actions. I'm asking the question where his head is. Some cases you're going to be able to help, some you're not. And you're going to have to be okay with that. Yeah. Every case hadn't been solved under her. Every trauma hadn't been delivered from. But at least we gave him the tools. And sometimes you're going to have to walk away with that. I've been binging on the Chicago fire. And a man got killed, and they were all distraught. And one of the lieutenants, he said they got back to the firehouse, and they was just lost. And the lieutenant said, hey, guys, I know we're going to pray for the foreman and pray he makes it. He said, but can y'all not forget we saved 5 lives today? They were so focused on the one they couldn't get, they couldn't celebrate the 5 that they did get. Learn how to celebrate your 5 wins, even when you're dealing with your 1 loss. Don't be so caught up in the loss till you're not celebrating the win. Right? And I'm going to give y'all some tools on how to work through this with each other, so our church can go to the next level. But now you got to do the work. Elder Bergstein will tell you, you got to do the work now. And that means you got to speak to people when you don't feel like it. Y'all think I don't be seeing the tension in the spirit? Y'all think everybody always come tell me? People don't tell me stuff. I promise you they don't. The Holy Ghost comes to me at 2:30 in the morning, like this morning. When I went to lay down, he said, And he began to drop stuff in my spirit. I said, Lord, I don't want to hear from you right now. Okay. God, we love you. We honor you. We thank you so much. Thank you for this open discussion. Thank you for the book. But God, not only thank you for the book, we thank you for the book, the Bible. Thank you because we learning how to love. We learning how to be open. We learning how to walk with each other. Not negatively, not to destroy, but just to be better people. And God, as we're leaving this place, but never from your presence, we give you all glory, honor, and praise. In Jesus' name, amen. Yeah, you don't want to know everything about everybody either, because you ain't going to follow God.
Hey everybody, Bishop Joseph Walker here, and I want to take a moment to invite you, yes you, to the most awesome conference on the planet. It's the Full Gospel Baptist Church Live Full Conference. It's happening in New Orleans, Louisiana, July the 9th through the 11th. And I need you to join me there. All of our leaders, all of the people of God are coming and convening in the mother city of our fellowship. Full Gospel was founded in